On this news review, the Iranian president says the U.S. presence in the Middle East is aimed at sowing seeds of discord among regional countries.
Our message to Persian Gulf countries is that we, together, can maintain the security of this region as we have done it throughout history. The security of the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, and the Sea of Oman can be guaranteed without any need to the presence of foreign forces. We welcome unity, integrity, and negotiations among regional countries.
The Iranian president was speaking at a cabinet session. Rouhani advised regional countries not to be deceived by what he called baseless claims by the U.S. and its allies. He said the U.S. proposed naval coalition in the Persian Gulf is doomed to failure. Rouhani stressed that the U.S. will also be defeated in its political, psychological, and economic war against the Iranian people. He also said Israel is the main factor behind insecurity, war, and terrorism in the Middle East. Joining us on this edition of the News Review, we have Director Center for Counter-Hegemonic Studies, Tim Anderson, joining us from Sydney, and also radio host and political commentator Max Egan joining us from Brisbane. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Let's start off with Mr. Anderson in Sydney. Walk us through these recent comments made by the Iranian president about tensions in the region. Time and again, Iranian officials have stated that countries in the region should be providing security for the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. Is the presence of foreign forces in the region one of the main causes of tensions in the first place?
Yes, certainly in the Persian Gulf and in the broader region too. If you look at the role of the US in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria, for example, there have been talks. Iran has had talks with the UAE, for example, and with, I believe, more recently with Turkey and with Pakistan about the situation, because one of the naval chiefs pointed out recently that Iran and Oman have managed a free passage through Hormuz for many decades. And the point he was making was that it's the outside powers that have introduced the instability and the violence into this relationship. And the question is to what extent that message is going to get through to the partners. Now, Iran has some leverage with the UAE and with Qatar, much less so with the Saudis, of course. So there is always the chance that some of the Persian Gulf monarchies might play a facilitating role for this further intervention.
Mr. Egan, your thoughts on the recent comments by Iranian President Hassan Rouhani. President Rouhani also stated that the naval coalition proposed by the United States in the Persian Gulf is also doomed to failure. Do you see it in that light as well?
Absolutely. Look, yeah, this is the United States just bullying the rest of the countries. This is what the United States sort of does. It puts its forces there, rallies a coalition, and sort of as a threat to the other countries to sort of say, well, if you're choosing to support Iran, then you're going to have to deal with us. And the United States has always been the main source of instability in the area. The whole region has got nothing to do with the United States policy. The United States shouldn't even be there. It's only there to protect Israel's foreign policies, really. I mean, everything the United States does in the Middle East is essentially to support Israeli foreign policy. And the president of Iran is completely correct when he says that Israel is the main cause of instability in the region. And it's been that way ever since the state was formed. But it's typical of the United States to do this, to just push the envelope as much as they can and wait for some form of reaction so that it can carry out the plan that it wants to do, which is to invade Iran. I mean, it's wanted to do this for quite a long time. But it is absolutely the main source of instability. It shouldn't be there. The United States really should leave the region alone and let the countries that run the region, that are in the region, control the region and you know, maintain security in the region. The United States only does provide insecurity by even being there in the first place, and it's always been that way.
Tim Anderson, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani just a few weeks back stated that the reason that tensions are so high right now in the region is because the United States decided to leave the JCPOA unilaterally. What do you think about that?
Yes, of course, the economic war that's been carried out by the Trump administration against Iran it is indeed a war. They are illegal actions of the attempt to blockade Iran, the attempt to prevent third parties doing business with Iran are illegal under international law, but the US has a habit of taking unilateral actions without regard to international law, and there's the problem. How are the other players on the map going to react to this? Now, there have been very limited support from the Europeans so far. Only the British really are on board. The French are ambiguous about it, and the Germans won't participate, the Japanese won't participate. So the idea of the US forming a coalition to advance its war against Iran seems a little bit more flimsy, and even the suggested participation of Israel, I suspect, might be a bluff, really, because if there were a physical Israeli presence in the Gulf, I think that would be extremely provocative and indeed setting up a target for some sort of preemptive possible strikes. So that would be very dangerous, but I would be surprised if the Israelis stuck their neck out that far.
Max Egan, are we in this position because of the United States' unilateral withdrawal from the JCPOA?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this is all designed to provoke this and push this. I mean, that's the only reason Trump would have cancelled that, just to push Iran a little bit more. And the previous guest is absolutely correct. The sanctions that are being waged against Iran at the moment is, in fact, an act of war. I mean, it's a covert war. It's a passive war, the sort of war you have where you're not dropping bombs, but it's basically attempting to influence the government in Iran, influence the people in Iran for regime change. And it's a covert war that's being waged, and it's just pushing and pushing and pushing, hoping for a reaction so then they can cry victim and go in and do what they want to do. It's all been designed to go this way. And I don't think Israel would stick its neck out there, because Israel never sticks its neck out. It always rallies the other countries to do its fighting for it. It's got to stay home and play victim and pretend that it's defending itself from hordes of terrorists at its doorstep, which it isn't. I mean, it's all the countries that it provokes into reaction again. And we just see this on a grander scale with what the United States is doing in the Gulf.
All right, thanks a lot, gentlemen. Tim Anderson from Sydney and Max Egan from Brisbane. Thank you for contributing to this segment of the program. And with that, it brings us to an end here on this edition of the News Review. Stay tuned. There's plenty more to come here on Press TV. Bye for now.